So, by some miracle, Red Bull finally managed to get rid of an underperforming driver. Unfortunately, it was the only one that people actually liked. Hello and welcome to Irreverent. Nothing happened in Singapore of any value. Now, traditionally, how we do this episode, how we do this format, is I, as your host, would introduce what we're going to be covering, very briefly. Whatever races we'd be talking about. Usually in the format of whatever one my co-host would be covering first, followed by the one I would talk about, and then whatever extra races we might have tacked on. However, Singapore was a complete snooze fest, and as such, does not warrant that level of discussion. So, instead, what I'm going to say is Lando won, Max came in second, Oscar Piastri rounded out the podium, Daniel Ricciardo stopped Lando from getting his first ever Grand Slam, and guaranteed that Max can win the championship by only coming in second for the rest of the races. That's what happened at the race. Now, another thing happened that we talked a little bit about last week, which was the rumors that Danny Rick was going to get fired after this race. Those were confirmed, because somehow it makes more sense to fire the driver who's on roughly equal footing as his teammate than it does to fire the driver who is costing you the world championship.
Would we all fire Danny Rick?
Here's the thing. I think there is a valid argument for not renewing his contract. But you can't do that while keeping Checo.
With your opening statement, I think it kind of said it all. It's like it seems so, there has to be something under the works people aren't aware of, like the general public, because on the outside, if I went to someone like who didn't know anything about racing, I said, hey person, I don't know, I'm going to give you 4 different scenarios. I'm going to name off, like, they're not going to know it's going to be Red Bull's driver. So I'm going to be like, driver 1 is dominant. Driver 2 is the opposite. Driver 3, literally everybody likes. And driver 4, literally everybody likes. Who are you getting rid of? And they're going to be like, oh, obviously the driver 2 is just anti-dominant.
Yeah.
And I think there has to be something going on that we as the public don't know, because I feel like I said, anybody could kind of probably tell that Checo was the correct one to get rid of out of the batch of 4, and maybe move one of the V-carb guys up to Red Bull and bring Liam Lawson in. But yeah, to fire Danny Rick when you could have easily fired Checo is like, yeah, there's just something going on, because I think, I mean, you've been saying it all year, but I think it's true where if Danny Rick got in the Red Bull, worst case scenario, he'd be better than Checo.
I mean, it's hard for him to be worse. Like, there are several races where Checo has managed to not score points despite being in... Admittedly, the Red Bull is probably, at this point, the 3rd fastest car most weekends. At best, it's the 2nd fastest. But that shouldn't be a car that's finishing outside the points.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So, it's like... What is... The only reasoning I can see, and there are rumors that Liberty Media has put pressure on Red Bull to not drop him, because the end of the season has a lot of North American races where he has a lot of support.
And you know, as a guy who has no experience in business, I come at from the point where you're going to sacrifice your entire sport because the entire sport loves Danny for a few races at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is, from what I can piece together, it seems like Red Bull was expecting one of their drivers to underperform so poorly that they were going to drop them mid-season. So they promised Liam a certain number of rides within the year.
Hmm.
And then, for some reason, something happened, and they started something changed, and some pressure started to be putting on them to keep Checo beyond what has already been there. Because an interesting thing to talk about with this is there is a very good chance that this costs Red Bull and VCarb the Visa sponsorship. Because the Visa sponsorship came from Danny Rick's management agency. And they sponsor both VCarb and Red Bull.
Does Checo really have that much support?
That's the thing. The only reason it makes sense, because he also has some dumb Disney Plus docu-series that's supposed to be coming out or is out. I haven't looked into it because, well, the idea of trying to praise a driver who has been completely incompetent for 2.5 years. But so
It's an attractive idea.
yeah, it's just like what has to have happened is there's something pressuring them to keep Checo, and then they realized, oh, we'll lose Liam if we don't drop somebody. And yeah, like you can't drop Yuki because he's performing on par with Danny Rick. And so that's like you drop him, well what better can he do than your driver that you were having consider replace one of your main team drivers?
I feel like the simplest solution we're coming up with again is just drop Checo.
Yeah. 100%. He should have been dropped last year. There was nothing in last season that showed he deserved a ride for this year. And that has only been reinforced.
Yeah.
He should have been.
I am with everybody. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, he shouldn't have gotten a renewed contract. They should have just gave Danny the last few runs in the still AlphaTauri last year, replacing Nick DeVries to get him back up to speed, and then put him in from the beginning of this season and have Liam in from the start of the season in the VCarb. That should have been what this year went like.
And that's not even like a hindsight 2020 comment. I think that's kind of what everyone's hopes and dreams were going into this season, was that Danny would somehow get back into the Red Bull.
Yeah. He should have. Checo should have been dropped races ago. He shouldn't have come back after the season break. I don't know why he keeps doing it.
He's aggravating that South American.
Like, the thing is, he is just, like, he had a pretty good career. And now, he just looks like an idiot who doesn't know when to admit he's not good enough.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have too much to add there. It's I unfortunately think he's kind of waited a bit too, a bit too long.
And he's not even going to get, like, some grand win or anything to be able to cap off his career. Because he doesn't have a car that's dominant enough for him to do that. Like, if Max is struggling fighting at the front, what chance he stand?
Well, you got to remember that it took Max's car a little while to be as bad as his. So now maybe they're kind of equal drivers.
God, I still can't believe that he tried to say that. Now, there is one other thing that I do want to mention about Singapore.
What?
I'm just double checking this. But, yep. Danny Rick has one last thing that he gets to cap off his career with. And that is that he now holds the lap record at Singapore. And there's likely to be changes to add more turns to it next year. So it is likely that this is the permanent racing lap record for Singapore.
He deserves it.
Yeah. And also,
And
he managed to take both Lando's first win and Lando's first Grand Slam from him.
Man, and I feel like I saw a lot of comments, which we're totally going to disagree with, because I mean, I was ringing this with the knowledge that he had the lap record, and I remember I saw a comment about like, well, anyone with new tires and a light load of fuel can feel like Michael Schumacher. I'm like, yes, but you also just don't like down the lap record if you're not good.
Especially not at a track like Singapore. It's not an
Yeah,
easy
and
track to pull that off at.
yeah, I mean, and plus he did this, if I'm correct, like near the end of the race, and near the end of the race, you're already kind of hot and sweaty and tired and unfocused, and he still managed to do that.
Yeah, I forget exactly when it was, but it was it was in the last 10 laps, if I'm remembering right.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think just anyone could have done what he did on that last lap there.
There is no world in which it makes sense for Danny Rick to be off the grid when Checo, Lance Stroll, K-Mag are still on it.
I agree, and I also, I don't know if you've been hearing this, but there's a lot of speculation, because I forget, I think it was Jack Doohan was talking about it's going to be great being the third Aussie on the grid, having 3 Aussies on the grid next year, and everyone's like, oh, is Danny already confirmed?
Yeah, but there's nothing that's been showing he's been talking to other teams. But it just...
What are his options? I think it might be good to review like his options for that. Is that it?
That's the only team that doesn't have a confirmed driver lineup, yeah.
And I know Danny has been on the record saying, if it's not a competitive ride, I don't want it. Like, I don't want to restart my F1 career.
He only took the V-Carb ride because it was a shot at the Red Bull seat, yeah.
Yeah, so I can appreciate that, though. Like, I wouldn't want it. Like,
no,
it kind of feel like a night. It would feel kind of like a nightmare to start like school again, let alone start your F1 career again.
Yeah, like the only option for a seat that he has left is to go for the team that is likely at this point to have a driver finish 23rd in a 20 driver contest. Also, yes, Bottas is likely to finish 23rd because now Liam is coming into a car that can occasionally score points.
Now, switching gears and looking at Liam Lawson, we can pregame Liam Lawson. Do you have high expectations? Do you have any expectations?
I mean, he is the first driver in history to score his first points at Singapore, so I imagine he's going to at least match Yuki.
Yeah, I am coming in with some expectation, definitely, like you. Mine's a little more tempered because it was kind of an awkward switch, but mostly
I should point out I'm
that...
talking about next year, not for the last couple of races.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes a lot more sense, because I can see him performing right off the bat potentially. But I do know, and some of Red Bull's tests, they talked about his lap times being kind of underwhelming a bit.
No, that car is an elephant, and that team is incompetent. So there is no way that they're going to get him up to speed in a couple of races. That's not on him. That is on the fact that V-Carb is kind of garbage this year in just their operational capacity. Which is another reason that Danny Rick shouldn't have been judged for it.
Yeah.
It's a team that doesn't know what they're doing.
especially when Yuki's been with the team since they basically like started.
That's the thing, is that's another thing. They're not really anywhere in comparison to the other teams, right? They're not directly comparable to that. And Yuki's a good driver. In his second season, he was able to compete with Gasly.
Hmm.
So is all of this happening just because VCarb's kind of a disaster at the moment, and that Red Bull is just massively underestimating how good Yuki is?
I really do like because honestly, I do want to talk about this. Like, I know we didn't have a lot to talk about F1, but I think you kind of open a can of worms where I feel like in every interview ever, or at least every Christian Horner slash Helmet Marko comment ever, when they compare a driver to Yuki, it's almost like they automatically have always assumed Yuki is garbage.
Yeah, they by default
And,
seem to assume that Yuki will be beat. Like DeVries. They assumed that DeVries was going to be better than Yuki, and Yuki destroyed him.
wouldn't it be hilarious if, like, after all these driver changes and everything, it just turned out that Yuki was about as good as Verstappen?
There's still speculation that Yuki is going to end up in the Aston seat with his Honda connections. And if he ends up taking them 2026 World Championship, that would be incredible.
Because yeah, I feel like Yuki just kind of gets pooped on for no real reason. Like you have to assume Yuki is good since he's basically beaten every teammate since Gasly left.
I mean, the thing is, even in his first season, he had races where he was great. It's just that he was incredibly inconsistent.
Uh huh.
And he's had races like that his entire career. It's just that, 2021 AlphaTauri knew what they were doing and were kind of awesome. And then the new regulations happened.
Oof.
But yeah, I
But yeah, I definitely
genuinely
want to
think
open.
that's part of the problem.
Yeah, because Danny Rick is. I mean, heck, I mean, we can't compare Danny Rick directly now, but if we're going to compare Prime Danny Rick to Prime Verstappen, Prime Danny Rick was a very good driver. Like probably top 10 driver like in the century, top 20 driver ever, Prime Danny Rick.
Yeah, like, I mean, even just like stats wise, he is one of the top drivers in Formula One history.
And we don't know how he's doing, but Yuki has not only like performed at Danny Rick's level, but above. Like I think currently Yuki has 22 points. Am I right?
22 to 12, yep.
He's basically almost twice the production of Danny Rick this year. And it's like each driver keeps leaving and leaving and leaving. And I think it's kind of time for Rebel to be like, is Yuki good? Like maybe Yuki isn't great anywhere else, like maybe on the Sims or something like that.
But again,
But
this is a
the
this
real
is
car is
another
very.
sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that the real car is obviously very different from the Sim, and like if Yuki isn't, if they're assuming Yuki is bad because his Sim times aren't like up to spec, it might be time to like reconsider like maybe he is good. Maybe we should treat all drivers coming up through AlphaTauri like Yuki is the gold standard of an AlphaTauri driver, or my bad, a V carb.
Well, my thing is this not the perfect season to try that? To just try the switch? You're going to lose the
Yeah, just put Yuki in the
constructors.
Red Bull.
Like, yeah, you've lost the constructors already. Checo's doing nothing to help Max at all. He's not taking points off of any of the competitors. So, like, again, it hurts no one to put someone else in that seat. Meanwhile, you have Horner and Marco now out here making comments that they're going to be keeping an eye on Colapinto.
Oh my god. You know what? can we also say Helmut Marko might be the horniest F1 like talent scout ever?
He
Like,
is a he's like a raccoon who just sees shiny thing and ooh, I want it.
like I feel like every other week, like Helmut Marko is claiming there's another Verstappen in Bangladesh F4. Like this guy cannot keep his eye off young kids.
Meanwhile, he refuses to actually have them promoted to somewhere useful.
Ooh.
And then
Meanwhile, he
Horner's,
refuses to fire the.
I'm pretty sure if it was Marco's choice, Checo would have never been hired.
That's true, because unfortunately, Helmut Marko's grand weakness is racism.
He is actively racist, so but
Isn't at least we know we have the security of one active racist on the F1 grid, even after Nelson Piquet left.
uh, but no, the thing is, you got Marco out there being like, yeah, we're gonna keep an eye on Calapito. Horner is over here like, yeah, no, if Russell became available, we're not opposed to bringing in outside talent. And it's like, what what are you guys doing at this point? What's the point of VCarb?
Has Max Verstappen kind of hear me out? I'm gonna try to finish out this point in the most what's the word?
Max
Um,
Verstappen has completely broken and destroyed everything that Red Bull, everything about how Red Bull operates and how they understand what racing is.
conspiracy. There we go. Like I was gonna say, yeah, that's kind of the point I'm gonna try to make in just a second. Like, has Max Verstappen, like the rise to F1, kind of ruined or tainted Christian Horner and Helmut Marko's like perspective on life as a
Yes.
whole? Like, like when you have a driver who literally just goes from F3 to F1 and wins and has been as good as Verstappen, I feel like that kind of has like produced evil Helmut Marko and evil Christian Horner who like ruthlessly like judge the talent of kids when normal humans need time to develop and need like nurturing to get there, kind of like an Alex Albon. Oh wait, but yeah, like you saw what happened when Albon was in there, when Gasly was in there. They're normal drivers who are good. They're good normal drivers, and they just kind of trashed them. Like they just kind of acted like they were the worst drivers ever. And now they're both very good drivers for their own respective teams. And it's kind of like any driver that has come up now has, yeah, had to face the Red Bull of doom. And considering my final piece of evidence that they're always trying to dub the next Verstappen, I think Max Verstappen has kind of broke both of those guys in different ways just by being him.
Yeah. The reason that I decided to just head off your entire thing by saying that was because you're known to hate Red Bull. I'm known to actually be a Red Bull fan, which means that whenever I say it, I can just say that. Red Bull doesn't know what they're doing anymore.
And I like I said, I think most this isn't a hate comment. This is just I think it's a fact that Max Verstappen has broken Red Bull. Just like his rise through F1 has kind of broken their perspective on racers and racing as a whole.
Red Bull did not have. It destroyed Red Bull's system and methodology.
It's like, well, obviously, if our driver can't go from F3 to F1 and win the world title in 2 years, then he's garbage.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just going through like the way they've treated Yuki, the way the expectations they set for the junior team. Kind of like I think Verstappen is kind of to blame for all this.
Yeah, it's just. This is why I'm glad that I care more about drivers than I do teams. Right? Like, I am a Red Bull fan. However, I'm more of a Max fan than I am a Red Bull fan. If Max drove for Mercedes, I probably wouldn't buy a Mercedes Max driver cap, but I would wear one of his just Max Verstappen hats.
But yeah, I feel like because of like just everything I read, like Helmut Marko's constantly getting horny for guys who kind of like basically look like Max Verstappen. It's kind of like I I guess what I'm getting at is I don't trust VCarb or anything related to that to even exist here in another like 3 to 5 years. Like there's so much flack from the junior team already, but the fact that the junior team keeps not working and they're really only the junior team's only claim to fame is Max Verstappen and oh look, Carlos Sainz is good and he raced for us one time is kind of like, are they going to keep doing this? Really?
The thing is, the junior team has the greatest tales of what have come out of the junior team are things that drivers did in the junior team, right? The
Yeah.
greatest story that team has is its 2 wins, which were not things that their drivers did at other teams. It was the drivers won there. I don't see Red Bull continuing to own that team for much longer. Not the way things are going.
I I know a lot of team principals have complaints about the operation of VCarb or even having a team B, especially Zach Brown. But
That's just because he's
the,
jealous.
yeah, that's true. But like, in all seriousness, though, is it even a good thing to have a B team when it seems to have worked out so poorly as it has?
That's my point. Is it's like this isn't a oh for a sporting reason they shouldn't have. I don't care about that. I don't think it makes sense for Red Bull to have it from their perspective.
Hmm.
Of course, who as for who they'll sell that to, probably not Andretti, but we'll get into that later.
I feel like this might be my perfect time to switcheroo to NASCAR and talk about their junior team and how much better their system is.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to force it.
No, I think that that pretty well covers that. We're now going to be going on to a we still have 2 more weeks of the 3 week break in F1, so who knows what's going to happen after that. Uh, but yeah, so go ahead and talk about the last couple of NASCAR races, and I'm gonna eat because
Okay.
I'm gonna have nothing to say for the next like 45 minutes to an hour.
All right. Let me look at my clock just to see how long I have to flap at 7:41. Okay, I'll be done by 3. Okay. I think yeah, I'm with Eli. It's kind of funny that we just spent 30 minutes talking about F1 and philosophy rather than the actual race weekend, but there we are.
I mean,
Um,
hey, that did kind of. It was either gonna be here or we were gonna talk about it in the news section.
yeah, yeah, you're right. I'm glad we got it over with early. And if you're still with us after that F1 discussion, we're cool. Um, but we will be going on to NASCAR, and I do want to start off NASCAR. Um, I think it'd be a good move to just quickly review the last couple of races because we are recording on a Sunday, so Kansas did just happen. But I'm gonna go Bristol, then Kansas. Basically, I'm a very sad person because Ford won 4 races in a row, if you remember, and I was about to actually get a butt tattoo of the Ford logo. And then this happened. Kyle Larson won at Bristol. Ross Chastain won today at Kansas. Um, the only reason I'm still breathing is because Ryan Blaney finished fourth. He's still very much in the fight. And did they? Yes, they updated the standings. So currently, William Byron is leading the round of 12 with Ryan Blaney in second, Christopher Bell in third, Kyle Larson is in fourth, Denny Hamlin in fifth, Alex Bowman in sixth, Chase Elliott in seventh, Joey Logano leading the cutoff in eighth with 4 points over Tyler Reddick in ninth, Daniel Suarez in 10th, Chase Briscoe in 11th, and Austin Cindric is at the tail end. So honestly, I feel like I just got my nuts stepped on, like as a Ford fan, where Watkins Glen may have been the high of highs since like I got into NASCAR. Like I haven't been that high off of a race and on that hard of a spiritual quest for a long time. And the two races that have transpired, all of a sudden, like the first round ends, two Fords, two Toyotas get eliminated. Now only one Chevrolet is in danger of elimination. Like all the Hendrick cars are safe, like so stupidly safe. And once again, I'm getting upset again. Now my 2021 angry bone is getting triggered again because all right, I expected Bristol to be good. I was optimistic. I knew there was probably not a real chance that a Ford driver other than Chris Buescher, who wasn't in the playoffs, was going to have a good chance. And what happened is what many largely considered to be the most boring Bristol night race we've had in this century. Not even kidding. Kyle Larson led 461 of the 500 laps. Long story short, people didn't like it. Even Kyle Larson fans, and I follow one of them, didn't like it. Because if you're not a NASCAR fan, I'm going to fill you in really quick because I listened to this race on the way home, driving back from my sister's in Indiana. And it was kind of perfect. Like, it was a 3.5 hour drive, 3.5 hour race. So I listened to the entirety of the race on the way home. And if you knew anything about the Bristol Spring Race, you knew that it was one of the best Bristol races ever. Ever. Not my opinion, but that was the public's opinion. Bristol, the spring race, Goodyear decided to bring a very high wear tire. Now, it wore even higher than Goodyear had anticipated, to a degree that the drivers could not push, and if they did push, the tires would wear out almost instantly. So the teams bought more tires from Goodyear and basically, I think, bought them out of stock at the race, trying to get more sets of tires because they were wearing out so quickly. As a fan of NASCAR for a good long time now, I didn't like it. Kind of unsettled me how much it was praised as a good race when I realized that, okay, people have only liked the race because it was so chaotic. Tires were wearing out left and right, down to the cord after like 40 laps of 500 lap race. And, you know, it was good action, since you couldn't push, only a few drivers could push and they were passing cars left and right. And it was entertaining to watch. But um, I don't think that's what a Bristol race should be. Um, and I also don't believe that this last race of Bristol should be what it should be because my long story was going to be that Goodyear overcompensated and now our tires didn't wear enough at this last Bristol race. And so you didn't have enough passing and enough action and enough parity. So you have opposite ends of the spectrum this year at Bristol thanks to Goodyear. And so what I did, Eli, was I actually did homework for this podcast. You know what I did? I sat down during dinner a few nights ago and I went on Reddit and I looked up what people's idea of the best Bristol night race ever was. Or just Bristol race, like what was the best Bristol race ever? And I got a lot of different opinions.
Careful, you're starting to sound like me.
But a lot of opinions.
That and also doing actual research.
Oh yeah. Guys, I'm not the guy, I'm not the nerd here. I'm just a NASCAR fan. But I was very surprised to see this answer because, first of all, 2018 was my first season of NASCAR. Bristol Spring Race 2018 was one of my strongest, like, core memories of watching a NASCAR race. One of the most popular answers for the best Bristol night race ever was 2018, and I didn't watch that race. I knew Kurt Busch had won it. I was, of course, still watching when he won it. I just didn't get to watch the actual race, but apparently that was one of the best Bristol night races ever. So I'm like, okay, this is the gold standard of a night race. I'm going to go watch it. And I did. I watched all of it. And I agree with them. It was one of the best Bristol races I ever watched. Um Tons of lead changes, lots of strategy. The cars could pass. The cars could pass very well. And I saw this opinion on Reddit. And Eli, I'm going to tell you something because if you're a NASCAR fan listening, I think this is the reality we're faced with. And I don't want to say it's like a bad opinion or you have to agree with it, but I think this is kind of, I was online with what this guy had to say. I think what made the 2018 night race good and so many of the 2010 night races good was because of the Gen 6 car. The Gen 6 car specialized on short tracks and road courses because that car, the teams could do just about the most with. It wasn't like Gen 5, which was a lot of spec, aero body work, and that sort of stuff. You could still work on your Gen 5 car as teams separately with a lot of areas. But the Generation 6 car, like some of the key areas were like low downforce, high horsepower, manufacturer identity, and a lot of team input into how the cars were set up and the parts that were used on them. And I think that's why they were good. That's why the Bristol race was good. It just happened to be one of the better races of that decade. But a good Gen 6 Bristol race is miles ahead of a good or what we think a good Generation 7 NASCAR race is at Bristol. A spec car that's mostly the same needs space to work, I think. And I think that's why we're not getting good short races, no matter what it seems like NASCAR tries, is because of how spec the car is. Where I think we can kind of look at IndyCar's road races. They're not the best road races ever. It's because IndyCars are mostly a spec series.
It's also because the
When people
tracks
want to
suck.
watch a, okay, yeah, I'll give you that too. Um, with a few exceptions though.
Yeah,
But
but those
I
exceptions,
think
the
an
races are great.
yeah, but I do like I don't want to be negative, but it probably is going to take something bombastic or off the wall like a horrible Goodyear tire. I keep wanting to say Bristol Eagle racing tire. It might as well be the Bristol tire because it's very unique. But
That's kind of the thing, isn't it? Like with a
I
short.
just don't think a spec car can run.
Sorry, I was just. That's
No,
kind of the thing with a
no,
short
good.
track, isn't it? Where it's because of how short the lap times are. It's kind of every little thing that you can do to differentiate yourself has that much more of an impact.
Yeah, and when none of the cars have any differentiation and that sort of thing is kind of when we get these snooze fests, kind of like what happened last week.
Yeah, because like when you have
And
high spec cars, one of the big things that you can do to set yourself apart with the setup is how it affects tire wear. So if you have high degradation tires, then suddenly that setup difference is going to have a major effect. But if the
yeah,
tires aren't high deg and you don't have a lot of other customization that can be done, then everybody's just going to be kind of caught up with each other.
yeah. So that's kind of the conclusion I saw from a few people and me. Is kind of like I feel like with this next gen car, we've kind of keep been hoping that NASCAR could fix it. When it's just, I think it's kind of science. If you, like you said, if you follow NASCAR's tire patterns and what Goodyear can put out, the typical NASCAR racing tire in general is actually a pretty good tire. Some people may disagree, but I think for the most part, like NASCAR tires are not in general high degradation tires. And when you put a spec car with a low deg tire, kind of like Eli said, we're kind of getting what we're getting. Where yes, the intermediate tracks have been really good because they stick close together, but when it's on a short track and road course, that's not as much fun anymore because passing is harder there. And yeah, I think the Gen 7 car, as long as it's going to stay this spec, it's going to struggle to put on, please fans at short tracks and road courses where I very vividly remember growing up watching the Gen 6 car. A lot of people complained about the intermediate package and the super speedway package, which is why NASCAR had that horrible 550 horsepower high downforce package, which is basically what we're seeing with this next gen car, honestly. So, you know, um,
You know what I find funny about that?
I'm sure there's,
Sorry, I was what I find funny about that is that the things that are going to draw people into bring people into NASCAR right now, I would think would be the short tracks and the road courses too, right? because short track racing gets you the like older school, more local guys who want to see that as opposed to just the big spectacle of the super speedways. And then road
Uh-huh.
course racing gets you more attention from international racing fans.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I want to do an episode at some point, Eli, explaining or mansplaining rather why I love 2018 so much. But honestly, as it stands now, um, I would dare say that the low downforce 2018 package we had might be the best middleman between what we have now with good super speedway racing versus what we had back then with good short track racing. Because a lot of the all-time NASCAR finishes happened in 2018. I think about Chicagoland, which is a very much like the stereotypical cookie cutter intermediate track, and the low downforce package was able to make it so we had an awesome finish. And that low downforce package, I think for 2017-18 was kind of a newer package with that car. Like NASCAR said, let's take this Generation 6 platform of like a lot of team customability, a lot of manufacturer identity, and let's cut a lot of the downforce away and keep the horsepower where it is. And it put on a lot of good shows. Unfortunately, the you can probably assume what the flaw was with the Gen 6 intermediate racing was that, yeah, when a team got the edge, you couldn't catch them. But um, I think the low downforce, I mean, of all the races I watched, there were plenty of good intermediate races with Gen 6 as long as there was lower downforce on it. So I think they had something there. But yeah, just kind of in terms of Bristol, um, I don't want to talk too much maybe about what the playoff picture looked like a week ago. Just in terms of quality of racing, I very much expect Goodyear to bring a tire that they're going to try to get it somewhere in the middle of what we had last week and what we had in the spring for next spring. That's probably, I feel like, what Goodyear's goal maybe should be. But a lot of people weren't very happy. And, I my personal opinion, because we don't care about what they think, right? We don't care about what the general populace think. We care about what this podcast thinks. I didn't like it. There we go. Move on. It's fine. It just, it's definitely not my meat and potatoes. I don't think any race where someone dominates. I mean, even like I rewatched the 2019 STP, or wait. Yeah, or was it the Blue Emu Maximum Pain Relief 500 at Martinsville? Either way, one of the races I watched, Brad Keselowski led the same amount of laps at Martinsville that Kyle Larson did at Bristol, and I was okay with it. But I can understand, 100%. It's never fun to watch people dominate that hard. You want to watch racing. You don't want to watch Max Verstappen. So, uh, but anyway, the Cup Series went from Bristol uh to that infamous race that's going to be lived, unfortunately, from here on out. It's going to be an infamous race to Kansas, which the race we had today, I listened to, didn't get to watch, unfortunately, but I listened to all of it. Um, I, of course, wasn't the most appeased because Chevrolet seemed to be in control a lot of the race. It didn't really feel like Ford had a ton of speed. They did, but unfortunately, all the Penske dudes had a lot of issues today. I really was toting either Logano or Blaney because they've both been great at Kansas to get a win today. I was really betting on if they didn't win, probably Kyle Larson or one of the Toyotas to get a win at Kansas because they're very good. No, none of those guys won. It was a non-playoff driver. Ross Chastain won at Kansas. He was good for most of the last stage. His pit crew was good. Pit strategy worked out well. Um, I think that NASCAR still has it with the intermediate package. Um, the racing is entertaining. Plenty of passes can be made. It's not like Ross Chastain won because he got the lead and no one could pass him. It was, Ross Chastain was the best when it counted at the end of the race, and he got that win.
Can I make a very
Um,
silly argument for something really fast?
sure.
This is going to go in direct opposition to several things I have said on the record on this podcast. But you just pointed out one of the things that I don't like about the playoff system, right?
Oh yeah, someone not in there won.
Yeah, exactly. So, if we have to keep the playoff system, and we have to keep the full field on the grid for these races, train them. How about this? The people still in the playoffs get an extra 100 horsepower. Just let it be pure chaos and pure show. It's still racing. Eli... It's still a full track. And heck, you could even reward points differently, like, bonuses or whatever, differently for the different people. Those in the playoffs and those not. But it also guarantees that the winner will be one of the playoffs drivers.
I'll mention two things. One, I'm going to quickly agree where I want playoff drivers to win playoff races because we want to see the guys who made it to the playoffs get rewarded. In terms of an extra 100 horsepower, I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to tell you exactly why, because you brought up a very vivid memory of mine. It was my first ever Homestead race, 2018. It was the Big Three and Joey Logano. And my dad kept joking because Joey Logano was passing a lot of these cars like they were staying still, and Dad's like, "Huh, it's like 4 race cars and a bunch of go-karts." And that made me think, it's like, well, would that really hurt? Because usually playoff teams do spend so much time on their cars that they are usually a good bit ahead of the competition by the time they land on the track. It's like, that's kind of what happens anyway, but now that the next gen car has kind of ruined that in a way because of the parity, how about you just stick some extra horsepower, because that's kind of what happened in Gen 6 anyway. It was just the good cars were very, very good.
Yeah, just let them open up a little bit more. Embrace the chaos, embrace the nonsense. That's what Formula E does. The reason that Formula E constantly gets faster times across sessions and across weekends is literally because the drivers are just given more power, right? The final round of qualifying in Formula E is the fastest, not because of track evolution, but just because they literally have more horsepower.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I know NASCAR probably wants to keep all the cars as even as they continue to can and basically treat every weekend like a normal weekend, just more than likely for sponsorship and revenue, and they don't want to disappoint sponsors. I bet money is going to have something to do with it, but as an idea on paper, I would be fine with that. Like, if you're going to keep all the other cars who no one wants to see win anyway, then make sure the other guys have, can have an edge. May make the edge smaller. 100 would be fun, but I feel like 50 would probably be a little more reasonable.
I was gonna say, realistically, it would end up being like 50 or 25, enough for it to like guarantee it, but not lap them by the end of lap 2.
Yeah, just a smaller increase of horsepower, but I'd be into that. Like, see that happen. Especially a track like Kansas with plenty of room to work and plenty of room to be fast. That'd be fun to watch. Maybe even like extra 25 would be fun to watch. I know Denny Hamlin was on the record saying that the engine bill for 900 horsepower is the same as 670. Can't believe that. So, and that made a lot of people angry because they're like, NASCAR, you're holding back on us. Why?
I was gonna say, suddenly I have a new idea. For every single race in the playoffs, the playoff drivers have to run 900 horsepower, no matter the track.
Well, I see these Instagram posts all the time of people like, oh man, because do you remember, Eli, in like the late 2000s when NASCAR got up to 1,000 horsepower?
Yes.
Everybody constantly like will post the noise and like the speed of them. They're like, oh yeah, remember when NASCAR had 1,000 horsepower?
Yeah. Suddenly, you just, here's the thing. We were trying that. No, okay. I'm seeing the problem in our logic earlier. We were trying to make it more reasonable. But that's always been the fundamental flaw with the playoff. They try to make it make more sense. We need to make it make less sense. The only time of the year that they're allowed to run 1,000 horsepower is if you're in the playoffs.
Yeah, make this just absolutely nuts to a point where the sponsors don't even want to run the other 10 races of the season. Just the 16 guys
But think of
putting down like but
all of
think
the
about what
sponsorship they would get.
but yeah, like think about like the level of just how good of a race car a 1000 horsepower Gen 7 NASCAR would be. Like because these cars already have so much grip and downforce than their predecessors and like you stick an extra 330 horsepower in them. I would love to see the lap times they could do at like an oval, like an intermediate Kansas or a Darlington or a Michigan. Like those would be some incredible like lap times.
Yep. Just embrace chaos.
I tell you what, I do think that I talked to my dad about this. Man, my dad's getting a lot of honorable mentions this episode, but we talk a lot. We like the same stuff. And I remember when I was like 14 or 15, like me and him were contemplating why NASCAR like lost all of its popularity. And I remember telling dad, and he agreed that back in the 90s, like a NASCAR race car was a good race car, like by those standards. Like they were living in the future in the 90s where these cars had close to 1000 horsepower. I forget how much it was in the 90s, but I wanted. Oh wait, I actually can give you an accurate.
I was gonna say, if I remember right, it was like the 800 to 900 range.
Interesting. It was 700 horsepower
Huh.
in the 90s.
I might be remembering the
But yeah,
early 2000s.
so this 2001 diecast I have says it was 700. So I'm guessing that's how much they had in the 90s. So I mean, 700 is still more than we have today by 30. So I'm sure that's still fine. But I feel like the NASCAR race car was always kind of a symbol for something cool, something that like a kid like if you gave a kid the option between a Lamborghini Murcielago in 2002 versus Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s Monte Carlo, he'd probably think the Monte Carlo was a cooler race car because it had more horsepower than the puny Lamborghini. And flash forward 20 years, and the future of NASCAR is a 670 horsepower, race car. Um, I think the if you think it looks cool is dependent on the person. I think it's okay. I still think they should move the number to the middle of the door instead of the goofy wheel well, but that's just me and half the NASCAR world. But when you compare a modern day NASCAR to a modern day supercar, and you kind of get like it's not the at the level it was like 20 years ago where they were generally considered to be a better machine. Nowadays, people still see a NASCAR as it was 20 years ago, but now that's kind of outdated. Like even with this brand new generation car, it's still kind of like the performance isn't there. It has modern day aerodynamics, modern day safety equipment, but it's lacking in power and yeah, all that stuff. And so you put it up against a modern day Porsche, 911 GT3, and they're kind of the same car. It's like I feel like a lot of people aren't getting into NASCAR because a kid will see it and it's like, well, that's like half the horsepower of any like good hypercar. Or we just have a lot more high performance cars on the general market nowadays
Well,
that
also,
make an
American philosophy on high performance cars has always been America was like the home of drag racing.
yeah,
And oval racing, let's be real, it's two drag strips connected to each other so you can go flat out for longer.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you didn't make NASCAR to like 100% challenge the driver's skills. It was mostly to go as fast as you can and win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
It
It
was
was all
originally
about
about
speed.
moonshiners being able to, you know, outpull the cops on highways.
Yeah, it's all about those Torgos and those horsies. And I guess kind of I'm trying to articulate what I was exactly trying to think. And I think it was like I wish NASCAR would go back to at least 1,000, just to like, because if a kid sees 670 horsepower, he's like, "Is that a lot?" Like someone who knows nothing about cars is like, "Is 670 a lot?" When a kid sees 4 digits, he's like, "Whoa, oh my gosh,
Well, also
like 1,000
670 is such a
horsepower."
weirdly specific number.
Yeah, like even 700 is better than 670. Even honestly, 500 is better than 670. For goodness sakes,
650
like
would be better because 670 just sounds like that's the most you can get out of it, not like you deliberately chose that number.
but yeah, like if Denny Hamlin is telling me that the bill for 900 horsepower is the same as 670, why? Why are you holding back? Why are they holding us back here?
Just embrace the
Like
nonsense.
I do, and I love the sport, but I mean, if you're going to be the premium motorsport in America, which the numbers still say it is, but if you, I mean, you can't just be satisfied. If you're going to beat IndyCar, you got to do it soundly. So, like, take these cars that people still are generally okay with and bring back a lot of old fans by making these like the spectacle of the closed wheel racing universe. Like, make this larger than life like it used to be 20 years ago. Like, heck, we live in a world where the Rimac Nevera makes like, is it 2,000 horsepower?
Something
And
stupid, I
the
forget.
and granted, a lot of these cars are electric. However, the new Corvette C8 is going to have over 1,000 horsepower. You're telling me that Chevrolet is releasing a car that's over 400 horsepower more powerful than their current stock car? That's supposed to be a racing instrument of speed, pure and raw speed, and it's getting outpaced by a car you can buy. That shouldn't be happening. Okay, I'm going to articulate it. I got it. The reason people love NASCAR was because what pulled them to NASCAR races was that was performance you couldn't buy for the streets.
Mm-hmm.
That was like untappable power. And now the power you get in a NASCAR is something you can get in a Porsche. Nobody cares about 670 horsepower. I'm going to be the first person to tell you to respect the speed, but at the same time, coming at it from a kid's perspective, 670 is not good. We need 1,000, at least 1,000.
Well,
If you
also,
like,
you're not even
give
the
us
fastest series on ovals.
fastest series on ovals. Who's the fastest on ovals?
It's Indy.
Oh, has Indy always been faster than NASCAR on ovals for like the last century though? I think.
Uh, it's actually a fairly recent development, if I'm remembering right. It used to be fairly
Okay,
competitive,
but
but
that's
it has to do with Indy's has to do with Indy's leaning more into aero. So it's been since like
okay.
the 90s.
But as a NASCAR fan, you just triggered my inner toxic masculinity, and that's good. That means our cars aren't good enough.
Here's the thing.
I mean, Indy cars are
What Indy has always had has been lap time. Where NASCAR could compete is top speed.
yeah, and now they ain't doing it.
Yeah, that's the thing. 1,000 horsepower. You're not going to be able to carry the same speed through the corners that Indy can, but you could probably get up to the same top speeds.
The speed that NASCAR pulled on 1,000 horsepower, I do believe. All right, if you're a NASCAR fan listening, or Luke in another 3 years, quote me if I'm wrong on this, or not quote me, but tell me if I'm wrong. But I do believe that the recorded top speed of a NASCAR with over 1,000 horsepower, I think they said could get over 250, which would match or be greater than IndyCar.
IndyCar's top speed at IMS, I believe, is 248. I believe was the record set this year.
NASCAR, you got to beat that. You can beat that. That was from 2010. This is 2024. You got all this sophisticated aerodynamics. You got all these teams and resources and money, and Denny Hamlin who wants to put at least 900 back in the car. You can hit 250 again. The car is the same weight it was all those years ago, with more carbon parts, with more better aero. Come on. I know the aero doesn't really matter, but come on. You can do it.
And heck, at that point, let's just go for 1,500 and strip off all the aero.
Yeah, I mean, Well, in the 2018, I always mention 2018 because, guys, that was the last time we had low downforce and high horsepower. In 2018, I remember Mike Joy was losing his mind because Kevin Harvick got up to like 212 miles an hour on the Michigan straightaway, and I think that's good. I mean, 212 on the Michigan straightaway is one of the fastest like speeds of that season. But we could get to 212 6 years ago easily with 750 horsepower. If you make that 900 with modern equipment, modern cars, with also, by the way, a lower drag coefficient, you're going to get to 220. No biggie. And the draft, into turn 4, you're going to get 220. And turn 3, my bad.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it, but they could. But yeah, I think that tangent was just kind of like, I think NASCAR is one brilliant, not just brilliant, one very easy move away from being a more exciting sport.
See, my whole problem with NASCAR is they have not realized what the WWE realized, which is you either lean fully into being about the show or worry about the sportsmanship. They've already started to lean into the showmanship, but then they held themselves back before they got to do any of the really fun stuff.
I'm going to read you the back of this diecast from 2001. In 2001, Hot Wheels marketed NASCAR than NASCAR markets itself now. They marketed it better. Listen to me when I read this, Eli.
Alright.
It says NASCAR races are a total body experience, already better than anything we have right now. When 43 700 horsepower engines roar by, you feel it in your bones. Grandstands rumble as these racers thunder past. The smell of burnt rubber hangs in the air, and the roar of the engines hits like waves on a beach. Hot Wheels Racing brings home the excitement of the track with the 2001 series of 1/64 scale NASCAR replicas. And everything is an ad there. But I mean, the first 3 sentences are better than anything we have right now. Advertising.
Yeah. And what is NASCAR even trying to advertise itself as anymore anyway?
They all it took was 30 extra horsepower to make it sound better. Like 700 sounds much better than 670.
Yeah, 700, 750.
Well, oh well. I I don't worry about NASCAR as a sport. It has so many investors who would rather die than not support it. It's going to live. I just wish, yeah.
I mean, the fundamental
I've
thing
always
is
wished for a little more.
like NASCAR as an organization could die, but the style of racing wouldn't.
Yeah, yeah, and people they've had enough fans over so many years and created such a strong legacy that it's always going to be here in some way. But yeah, I'm with you. There are several valid things, but I think if it's one thing that NASCAR has taught me at the last couple of weeks, it's that maybe more horsepower is the answer to all of this. Because you're not going to fix the Gen 7 car entirely with its spec nature, but you can make it darn exciting.
Jeremy Clarkson was right when
And what?
I was just saying Jeremy Clarkson's right when he says that the solution to everything is just more speed and more power.
You got to give it to the guy. And I'm gonna say, NASCAR, if you're listening, which why wouldn't you be? You love us. Before you add more horsepower to your cars, could you please put the number back in the middle of the door? Thank you.
You know what? I would
It looks
accept the
goofy.
stupid placement of the number if the cars had 1,000 horsepower.
Eli, actually, you know what? I'm glad you would. But as a fan, as a guy who knows what he likes, I would not. I'm still going to loathe the car as long as the door is by the wheel, or as long as the number is by the wheel well.
Here's the
And
thing.
also, if you could change the wheel, What?
I would argue that like I would not mind if they just completely got rid of liveries if they let them put rocket engines on the back.
Interesting.
I mean, it would make a horrible time to figure out who won, but also I'm pretty sure if you do that, the winner is just going to be whoever is the last person not pressed into a pancake on turn 2.
Well, NASCAR, if you're listening, Eli wants rocket engines. I want the number back to where it belongs. I want racing wheels back. I don't want these joke plastic stock rims. I call them plastic because I don't know what they're going for with them. I want racing rims back. I want the number placement back. Eli wants rocket engines, and let's up the horsepower. Boom! It's a perfect sport. Back to Bedlam, baby.
If I knew how to mod games,
Oh,
I would. If I knew how to make mods, we would have this.
if we had mods, this would be very dangerous. He's too dangerous to be kept alive. Did I have anything more on NAS? I thought I had something else besides just the past couple of weeks. And
You at one
I think
point
what I
mentioned
could do is
something
give you
about
a.
NASCAR's junior team and wanting to talk about them.
Oh, thank you.
That
Glad
was
you're here,
actually the
Eli.
original segue to go from F1 to this, 40 minutes ago.
All right. Well, I'll defend myself. I didn't want to start with something so random out there as that. But now that you know what happened the last couple of weeks, I'll go ahead and talk about the randomness of NASCAR's junior team. And you already know the reason why we're on the junior team, but I like NASCAR's junior. The way a top tier NASCAR team gets a new driver in their team a little more than Red Bull. Because in F1, the junior team should be the junior category. You should mark kind of like align yourself with a team by the time you get to F3, or a team should select their driver and nurture their talent to F3 to F2 to their F1 seat. In NASCAR, a driver is usually not picked up by a team, but rather a manufacturer when they get into trucks. For instance, Haley Deegan's been with Ford. What's his name? Corey Heim has been with Toyota, and Zane Smith, I believe, has been with Chevrolet. I think he was with Ford once, but I think he's a Chevrolet development driver now. Anyway, the manufacturer rather than the team will pick up the driver to develop them. Once the driver gets to Xfinity, typically as when the offers from the Cup Series start coming in, and usually that driver is still with the manufacturer that selected them by the time they're in Xfinity, kind of like I think Cole Custer's been with Ford. He's still with Ford, but I think he was with them in trucks too. So he's a good example. So is Christopher Bell, and they'll usually get picked up by a top team in Xfinity. If they're not picked up by a top team out of Xfinity, this is what happens. The manufacturer continues to be their ally, and the manufacturer will put them in a lower team in the Cup Series. So the team won't have a say generally. However, there are several alliances. So, for instance, Team Penske, if Team Penske wants to develop a guy but doesn't have room for them in their main stable, they're going to probably put him in the Wood Brothers number 21. If Joe Gibbs Racing wants a guy to get in their team but they don't have room, they're going to stick him. They used to stick him with Levine Family Racing. Now I want to say, does Joe Gibb have development? I think Legacy Motor Club is trying to be its own thing now. Yeah, I think 2311 might be that team now for Joe Gibbs, but it was more effective when it was Levine. It was a smaller team, and if you're Ford, you're probably going to be Oh, did I already yeah, I already mentioned Ford. My bad. If you're Chevrolet and RCR or Hendrick wants to pick you up, you're probably going to be put with Aspire Motorsports or a Colleague Racing. It's I feel like I like NASCAR's junior system better because if the team doesn't want you, you're not out of hope. Like, your manufacturer is still going to support you. Generally, your sponsors will support you where you go. And if you want in the Cup Series but can't get a ride, you can be put with a smaller team. Um, so yeah, I kind of like that. I like NASCAR's junior system better because drivers just have more opportunity than they do in F1. And it's less how should I put this, awkward. It's less um tight and cramped, and there's just more opportunity to get a career in NASCAR. Where, let's say, Team Penske ends up, let's say, Ryan Blaney was only okay at Wood Brothers. That's okay. Team Penske will move on to try to find a different development driver, and Wood will probably stick with Blaney until they find someone else. And from there, Blaney can probably just start his career himself. But like, if the teams, like the top teams in NASCAR, don't want you, it's not going to be over for you. Like, you're not going to go to, an endurance series or IMSA. You probably still have a home in NASCAR. You're probably just going to be stuck with lesser equipment, which I think is fair. So yeah, but that's how you go from trucks to Xfinity to Cup. Is a lot of times there's an entry into Cup even if you don't get into a top team.
Hmm. I mean, it makes more sense, but the problem you have with F1 is just the limited number of seats, and the manufacturers and the teams are one and the same.
Yeah, maybe I just like NASCAR better than F1, and I'm not going to come out and say it, but
I mean,
I
that
do like that
methodology
there is a
works.
little more.
That methodology works better. It's also highly reliant on the junior series car actually being comparable to the main series car.
Yeah.
So that's another problem.
So but yeah, I kind of like the way, because I wish in F1, like, you know, if I think the problem is a manufacturer typically is, the factory team, but I'm trying to think of a good example of maybe like Mercedes, like if they have, like if the team Mercedes doesn't want you, then the manufacturer itself can find you a home. I wish that was more of a
Mercedes and
thing.
Williams, Ferrari and Haas or Sauber sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like, I think that's why it's so nice. Is like, if this year Penske drops Joey Logano, then Ford could help him, and Shell Penzo could help him to find a ride somewhere else in the same series. In F1, that usually just can't happen because of the cramped room, and also, yeah, your sponsors mean less to you in F1, I think, than they do in NASCAR, where the money means a lot more in the Cup Series than it does in F1, because F1 is already so stank with cash.
Well, also, there aren't manufacturers come in modern Formula One to produce an engine for a team. Most of the time, their own team. That didn't
Hmm.
used to be the case, but that is now. So, because you occasionally do get drivers who are backed by the engine manufacturer, Yuki, but right, like the whole reason that Yuki was ever part of the Red Bull Academy was because he was a Honda sponsored driver in open wheel racing.
Hmm.
Red Bull partnered with Honda for their engines, and so Honda was like, "Hey, we've got this good driver," and then
Yeah.
the Honda decided to pull out of F1, except not, and that ruined their relationship with Red Bull and means that Yuki has nowhere to go.
Yeah. But that's NASCAR's kind of junior system, which I, yeah, I think, I don't think it's super fair to criticize after I went all in on this F1, because I think that's just the unfortunate nature. Is F1 is so elitist that uh, a sport like NASCAR, which is a top tier a racing series, kind of like IndyCar, it not all hope is lost if you're Daniel Ricciardo in those two series, but in F1 it is, essentially, unless you go to Sauber, which will very likely not happen even if he tries. So it's kind of like, I think the cramped space is the nature of the beast, but also a reason why I feel like the junior program isn't my favorite thing ever because it gets cramped so quickly. It's like, we have, you know, 5 drivers we could put in this seat and we kind of want to see in this seat, but we only have 2 seats.
Yeah.
Versus NASCAR, where that's never ever going to be an issue. Typically, as long as you have 40 cars available for charters, there's always going to be 20 to 30 good drivers on a NASCAR grid and 10 drivers who are getting their first shot there, and usually everybody is happy at some point, which is awesome.
If only we had a couple extra teams in Formula One.
I
Unfortunately,
wonder where we
the chances of that happening are looking slimmer and slimmer.
if you couldn't notice, guys, we're off of NASCAR and into our news segment.
Yeah, so you've not heard about the Andretti situation, as I discovered right before this episode.
I did not.
Yeah, so Andretti Global had undergone some restructuring, and supposedly, right, I'm going to start with what we do know for certain. Dan Taurus, who is the CEO of Group 101, the big sponsor, big partner of IndyCar, led up the investment group that uh, provided a lot of the funding and stuff for Andretti's bid for Formula One, is now what's his actual title? He is now the head of their of operations for Andretti Global, with Michael Andretti stepping down and moving into according to Forbes, it says Michael's goal has been to transition to a more strategic role and focus less on the operational side of the race team. And so, according to this, Dan Towers will now be the head of the operations side, whereas Michael will be some form of strategic advisor. And supposedly, this has included him selling his stake in the team to Dan Towers, meaning that Andretti is now fully owned by an investment group. That is the part that is
So
unconfirmed
does
as
this
far as I've been able to tell.
so does this mean that Andre is probably not going to be an F1?
That's the interesting thing, because this group that now owns it, their entire investment in the team was with the intention of being an F1 team. But this sort of dynamic probably means it's going to be delayed a bit longer.
I feel very bad for Andretti. Like to have a to have this dream of racing in F1 and just constantly getting hit with unfortunate stuff and constantly just switching things up, and it feels like it's never going to happen.
I'm almost hoping this is like some 10,000 IQ play where Michael has managed to piss off everyone involved in Formula One so much that like that's a non-starter, and that like by doing that they realize that by doing this they'll be able to be like, oh no, we're not like him. We'll totally play your game, and they'll be able to use that as a bargaining chip.
You never know. That would
It's
be
a
awesome.
ridiculous conspiracy theory, but like, let me feel delusional.
Life isn't good unless you're feeling delusional about something.
Yep.
Shout out to my wife. Doesn't exist.
Oh. But so that's the Andretti news. Um, I do have some other news.
Okay.
So this is news that I did not tell you about beforehand. A Raikkonen has
Uh-oh.
become a champion again.
Did he go on some spiritual quest?
No, Robin Raikkonen won a karting championship.
Helmet Marco is just like that's a blue pill for Helmet Marco.
Yep. So we've already got the next generation of Kimmies coming along. Just, give them another 10 years. About the time when Piastri's ready to retire, and then we'll have the next generation of Iceman on the grid. And in
And that
continuing
is pretty cool.
breaking news story, Max Verstappen is like comedically obsessed with Minecraft.
You know, I think his performances have showed that Minecraft actually helps you in F1.
It, to be fair, he got into Minecraft right before Singapore, and he managed to, in spite of having at best the second fastest car, pull out second place.
I think Minecraft helped him. I think you know what? I think guys, I think Max Verstappen is going to win for two reasons. One, Danny Rick has blessed him with that extra point, and two is because I think Minecraft is going to be the best thing for Max Verstappen's focused. Much to Helmut Marko's chagrin, like Minecraft is going to be the reset Max Verstappen needs. He's going to get tile number 4 because of Minecraft and Danny Rick.
I just sent you two more clips. I sent you one the other day, but in one of these he starts making villager noises, unprompted.
Oh my gosh, he's already at that level of Minecraft is where he's starting to make his own villager noises.
Not only that, they are perfect.
Man, you know, this guy, yeah, he's hopeless. He's going to win this year because of this.
He's gonna single-handedly win
Honestly,
both championships again.
I joked about Kemi going on a spiritual quest. I think Max is on a Minecraft spiritual quest right now.
He really is, and this was the most unexpected thing to come out of all of this, but I kind of love it.
I just like getting news updates about him playing Minecraft.
I am waiting
I
for the inevitable he gets bored and decides to start streaming it, just because we will have so much content.
what the biggest career change ever? Because think about like how well timed this is. Red Bull's about to fall under. Okay, Red by next year, Max might be ready to leave, end his contract prematurely. What if Max just becomes like the next PewDiePie?
I just I love the idea of Max becoming just a streamer, and it's nothing to do with racing games. Like that, I think would be the funniest career move ever.
Why'd you give up racing? Well, for love. Um, honestly, I'm kind of more interested in Max Verstappen's Minecraft life than the F1 championship this year.
I mean, here's the thing. McLaren has won the Constructors' Championship and Max has won the Drivers' Championship. So, like, all we've got is Max being silly, which, to be fair, he has decided to be very silly between hosting his own private press conferences and making villager noises.
I I do feel like Minecraft villager noises are. I'm trying to think of levels of Minecraft like addiction. I think I think Max is kind of at the level of like week 3 is when you start making like the noises of villagers and probably like the pillagers and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like what his next level is going to be. Like after I was doing villager noises, what was I doing in Minecraft after like 2 months of playing Minecraft?
I
I'm
mean,
trying to think of like my first 2 months.
at this point, it's either like hardcore into modding, speedrunning, or creative mode. It's one of those three is the next step.
Yeah, I think Max for me it was creative mode for me after 2 months was creative was I was just building my own cities and stuff. I think Max might be more of the modder.
Yeah. I feel like speedrunning would be a bit too close to racing for him to want to relax. I feel like it'll happen, but not immediately.
Yeah. So my first week of Minecraft was focused on killing pillagers because one spawned in my village. After 2 weeks, my goal was trying to make different colored dyes to color my sheep with. 3 weeks was definitely making the noises of the game. After 1 month, it was kind of just realizing that I've kind of hit the pinnacle of the game and just I survived. I had diamond everything. And yeah, I think anything after that really was just kind of like either try to redo it all again or do creative mode.
God, it is hilarious and terrifying to me that your sound you were imitating is villager sounds. Meanwhile, when I was playing, it was the Steve hit sound, which isn't even in the game anymore.
Oh, Steve made a hit sound?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't get into Minecraft until COVID, guys. As soon as COVID hit is when I got into Minecraft. That could be why. I was really behind.
It's just, yeah. But anyway,
I
I think we've
at
exhausted
least I'm
everything
not.
we have to talk about.
No, I'm gonna say at least I beat Max Verstappen in something, and that was getting to Minecraft first.
True. True.
And I have one more thing to say, and that is I'm on mile 1200 on my motors.
I almost forgot. Yeah,
That's your mileage update.
we were waiting for that update.
I think I'm about 120, 150 miles more than the last week. So big week.
Oh, this is. I like how our news sections are just getting more and more unhinged. It'd be
I think
hilarious
that
if we one day somehow actually ended up breaking a news story, just because
break.
we would sandwich it in between so much nonsense.
And Max Verstappen prematurely ends his contract at Red Bull. Anyway, here's your motorcycle mileage update.
Oh,
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I've kind of exhausted everything I have to say. Unless you want to spend the final 3 minutes of listening to me talk about why 2018 was the greatest NASCAR season ever, which we can totally do that. I will do it right now.
I here's the thing. We have almost no other racing going on for the next 2 weeks, so save it for later.
What if you let me do that? I would actually be very grateful. And I mean, I love F1. Like if you wanted to do your F1 equivalent, maybe like why Sebastian Vettel's tenure was the best season ever. You can do that, but I need to talk about 2018 because I think it's more than just a feeling. I think I just so happened to enter into one of the best seasons in modern NASCAR history.
I mean, hey, like I said, we, we are very light on races for the next couple of weeks, so especially now, this week's
Uh,
episode we don't even have a race. You covered the NASCAR race already.
that's right. I covered Kansas.
So
Oh,
yeah, there
um,
you go. That's I was
can
struggling about what
and
we're gonna
that
talk about next time. Levi's gonna talk about why
guys, okay,
2018 was the greatest NASCAR season ever.
wait. Oh my gosh, you're allowing me to do this? I can actually do this for the next podcast?
You're the host, and we literally have like one
Oh my
MotoGP
gosh.
race.
I've been storing notes for probably 2 years on this, but there is some dark stuff going on with 2018. I think the racing gods had something to do with that year, and I'm going to explain to you why this, whatever we can record. I get allergy shots once every 2 weeks, and I am zonked on Thursdays. So maybe Saturday, Sunday morning, you guys can have a fresh episode in your feed about Eli just listening to me talk about probably why in the end I might just need to go back to therapy. But I think it's going to be why 2018 was the best season in this century at least, if not the best season ever. And I have legitimate reasons. I know what you're saying, listeners. I know what you're saying. I get it. 1992 existed. 1992 was one of the best NASCAR seasons ever. However, there's a few lurking reasons why 2018 would be my pick and my ballot, and it's not just because I'm a Kevin Harvick fanboy. You got to hear me out. This Friday, we'll go Friday.
Sounds like a plan. And I'll find something equally.
I'm so happy.
You know what? I'm gonna try to find something even more unhinged to talk about.
Oh no. My Minecraft Story by Eli Weaver.
That would be way more than one episode.
Oh no. I honestly can't wait
It's
for
been
winter
15
to come.
years.
I honestly can't wait for winter to come, so each and every episode will be crazier and crazier until it gets to a point where it just becomes unhealthy.
At some point, this is going to stop being a racing podcast.
I'm glad we can both come to peace with this. This was going to begin as a racing podcast, but we didn't know how it was going to end.
I knew full well. It would either peter into nothingness or have nothing to do with the original subject. I already plan on making you watch an anime for one of the winter episodes.
No.
Don't worry, it's about Formula 4. It is apparently, according to
Really?
a lot of people involved in racing, a really accurate depiction of regional Formula 4 racing internal politics.
This must be how like old guys watching prequels for the first time felt when like they had all the politics in the Phantom Menace.
I've not actually seen the show. It's just, I first heard about it due to, and as I've mentioned on the show before, I follow people who talk about anime. It was not them. It was people who talk about racing. Who were like,
Oh.
this is actually a really accurate depiction of Junior Series, how hard it could be to enter into it, how hard it could be for smaller teams to run and compete. Because the premise of the show is like, it's like a one-car team. Dude wanted to be a driver, joins the team as a mechanic, and gets offered, like, the rich dude who owns the team is able to add in a second seat, barely. So the guy's like, he's like, if you want to try and drive it, you can do it, but you need to be good enough to get your own sponsors. And so that's like the premise of the series is this dude barely hanging on to his chance versus a bunch of like rich pay drivers in Japanese Formula 4.
That sounds like that is going to be the subject material for every like Asphalt 9 racing game ever.
But so that's just a preview of an eventual episode when things will start to get very silly. But we're all done for tonight. So we will see you probably Friday, where Levi is going to spend at least an hour talking about 2018.
That's going to be at least an hour, guys. Like I might send myself on another spiritual quest. We're going to see.
If he does not talk about it for at least an hour straight, he will contractually owe you $1,000. Every single listener.
Heck yeah, I don't owe him anything. I'm gonna get this text from Luke like in 2028 that's gonna be like, hey, where's my money?
You're gonna be like 1 second short of an hour.